Okay, guys, so I'm gonna get straight into it. UFC Vegas 29. So, to be honest, it's only going to be about 2 or 3 fights. Well, 3 fights to be specific that really captured my interest for this event. So, starting off with the main card, the main event, ROBFONT versus CODYGARBRANDT. And I'm actually going to be honest with you, I'm embarrassed to say this, I've never seen CODYGARBRANDT actually fight. No, but looking on his past fights. Starting off with ROBFONT, his past fight UFC on Fox 31. His stand-up looked good, had good ground game. He's fighting, I should also point out, he's fighting Sergio Pettis, or Sergio Pettis. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Sergio Pettis, that's how I'm going to pronounce it. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the description, in the comment section below if you're watching on YouTube. So yeah, in that fight, ROBFONT had good ground game, and he could have kept Pettis on the ground for longer, if not for the fact that Pettis was using his legs to keep Font away. Now, looking at ROBFONT, how he fights, he likes to put pressure on his opponent, and just from what I could see, in my own opinion, he looks like sort of fighter that closes in on his opponent with strikes, almost like strikes and heavy shots, sometimes counter strikes. And his stats: 5'8" tall, 71.5-inch reach in terms of his striking, 135 pounds. His record: 18 wins and only 4 losses. That's pretty good, and he's ranked at number 3 in the bantamweight ranking. Now, his opponent CODYGARBRANDT, I have to say, on Cody's side, Cody has a lot of speed and agility. You know, he is always on the move. From what I could see in this last fight with Rafael Asankaya at UFC 250, Cody seems to be the sort of agile, and his stand-up seems sharp and agile, always moving, always pacing, never staying in one place at all, no matter what. He's fast, you know, he's always moving, and you know, someone who's always moving like that, it's my assumption that you're going to be, you know, a moving target, moving objects. That is your target. That's your opponent's target. You yourself as a fighter, you are going to be difficult to hit because you're always, you know, always moving. Now Cody won this fight by KO right before the bell sounded to sound the end of the second round, and it was just wild. Cody was cornered in the one corner of the octagon by his opponent Rafael, and I think after defending himself as best he could, I should play that back actually, but no, I can't do that in the middle of this podcast. While he was doing so, he just, without warning, was his left or right hand, but he just delivered a knockout just right before the end of the second round. It was just crazy, and his opponent just went down, and I like to use the phrase as stiff as a board. No, it was mad. It's 12 wins. He has 12 wins, 3 losses. He's number 4 in the bantamweight division, 5'8" tall, and has a reach of 65.5 feet. I'm assuming so. His reach and his opponent's reach, actually, there is some significant difference between the two guys. But for me, I'm gonna say that Garbrandt probably has the upper hand here when it comes to stand up. When it comes to the ground, when it comes to the ground game, to the wrestling, to the grappling, to the clinches, to the guillotines, probably his opponent ROBFONT has that advantage. But you know, again, in these sort of things, when it comes to mixed martial arts, when it comes to sports, combat sports, in my own past experience, I'll say it's going to go this way, and then lo and behold, on the night of the event, the complete opposite happens. So I'm not going to. Well, no, I have to make a decision here. Excuse me. In my opinion, I think CODYGARBRANDT probably has this because, it's before you can take someone down, I think you got to get past their stand up. If their stand up's really good, then they can actually stay off the ground. They can stop you from taking them down to the ground. I'm assuming so. I mean, unless if maybe you can get them into a takedown through a clinch. But I think in this case, because CODYGARBRANDT is always moving, was always very agile, always bouncing. He's always bouncing and hopping from foot to foot. I think he probably has the upper hand because, as I said before, a moving target, a target that's always moving, is going to be difficult to hit. So for me personally, I think Cody Garbrandt probably has the upper hand. Even though, yeah, I do understand that their reach, there's quite a significant difference in reach. Font has a reach that's probably 6 inches greater than that of Cody's. Cody's is at 65.5. ROBFONT is at 71.5. So for me personally, I think Cody has this, but let's wait and see what happens. You know, it's a sport that's moving fast all the time. So moving on from that, actually, let me check the event. Yeah. So moving on, we have the women's strawweight division between Yan Shay as a Chinese athlete, Yan Xiaonan versus Carla Esparza. So these two fighters, Yan, her last fight, which was at UFC Vegas 13 against Claudia Gadelha. In that fight, her stand-ups is good. She seems to do plenty of counter striking. Her ground game is quite good too. She's talented enough to defend herself. Now her record stands at 13 wins and just a single loss. So I think one loss. I think I also saw a no contest in there. I mean, overall, she's won more fights than she's lost. So that speaks for itself. And now on the other hand, her opponent, Carla Esparza, her last fight at UFC Fight Island 3 against Marina Rodriguez. Now in that fight, she had a good ground game. She looked like she could control her opponent well on the ground and still deliver strikes at the same time. And for this particular fight, it did look like a chunk of the fight. Most of the fight took place on the ground because of her. So I think this one probably is going to be close. I think now I know what I've said about Cody Garbrandt and the other guy, ROBFONT, but I think again we're probably Carla Esparza probably has this. I was thinking that this girl back at the other event, and I can't remember it now, probably before UFC 262 between the Lithuanian girl, is it Rose against, I've forgotten her name, another Chinese fighter. So I thought the Chinese fighter would actually win, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. It didn't work out that way. So I think this will be a close one. I think again, probably Carla has the advantage because her ground game probably is really, really good. In her last fight at UFC Fight Island 3 against Marina Rodriguez, she could keep her opponent on the ground and at the same time still control them there and still dish out some really heavy shots. So I think if I had to bet, I'd probably go for Carla Esparza. I'd probably place my money on her. But again, let me wait and see what happens. Let's wait and see what happens. Moving on, the other fight that took my interest, it was this is the heavyweight division for the men between Justin Tafa and Jared Vanderaa. Tafa, I think it's because of his win, or was it his loss? But I saw him fight at one of the past performances at UFC Fight Nights for Holloway versus Qatar. Now he lost that against Carlos Felipe. Now that was at UFC Fight Island 7, where Max Holloway did also compete as well. Now he does appear to be a sort of calm and calculated striker, or fighter who waits for the right time to attack his opponent, to dish out strikes or to take them down. He seems patient to attack. Now his opponent, looking at his own performance, and he fought Sergey Spivak at a UFC Fight Night 185. And I watched this. So I was actually thinking there's no footage of this on the UFC Fight Pass. So I dug deep and looked even harder. So it was a very messy and bloody fight for Jared Vanderaa. He could, in the clinches and the takedowns, he could defend himself well up until the point that God, how should I describe this? He did take some really heavy shots from Sergey, but he didn't at that point before the point where he lost. He didn't let Sergey get to fully mount him, and but in the second round, the takedowns for that Sergey was actually dishing out like strikes. The takedowns that Sergey was having and using on Jared seems to be too much, and I could see that at one point just towards the end, Sergey didn't manage to get on top of Jared and just dishing out really heavy shots, really heavy blows, and it was just making a mess of Jared's face. There was blood everywhere on his face, on the canvas, on his gloves, and I think that fight had to be stopped. So the referee had to just call a stoppage to the fight. So okay, that didn't look so good, but for these two guys, I think it's going to be a close one. I look at the last fights because they usually say you're only as good as your last fight, your last match. Though that isn't always the case. The next fight can go the other way, or can go being your favour, or it can go in the favour of the other person. So if I had to place money on this, if I was a betting person, which I believe, if I'm gonna really be invested in mixed martial arts, maybe one day I will place some money on a fight. Hopefully it won't become a habit. But if I had to make a decision who would win this fight, I'd say it's gonna be a close one. But I think maybe think maybe Justin Taffer. I think if I had to, because he seems someone who's calm and collected, probably is a lot smarter about how they go about winning the fight, or how they go about fighting in the octagon, in the cage there. But again, the sport's so crazy, moves so fast, it can go the other way. But if I had to place some more money on this fight, I say I'll go with Justin Taffer to win this fight. But let's see what happens. So after his win at UFC 262 against Michael Chandler, who there's a lot of speculation, and I'm probably late for mentioning this in my podcast, but hey, I'm going to say it anyway, because it's a fight that I was keen on, that I watched, and I was actually keen and rooting for Michael Chandler to win. But respect to Charles Oliveira, who was the better fighter. He was the better fighter that evening, and he won. Congratulations to him. So who should he fight next? And it's quite funny actually, because the potential opponents that's coming up to compete with him again, the three of them, just Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, and Dustin Poirier. And it's quite funny because after Dustin Poirier's win against Conor McGregor, the source, the things that happened to Dustin Poirier, good things of course, lots of sponsorships, got paid a lot of money. His ranking was boosted in the UFC rankings for the lightweight division after that fight. I think Charles Oliveira did actually reach out to Dustin Poirier and actually I think requested to fight him, but Dustin Poirier actually ignored him. I think he actually sent him a message on, is it Twitter or Instagram, but I think he reached out some way, and what happened is that Dustin Poirier actually ignored him, favoured a fight with Conor McGregor instead. And people were saying that, well, that's a smart move. Okay, it's not for the title as such, but it's a business decision. It's a money fight, because of the opponent you're fighting is someone who's going to draw in so many pay-per-views for the event from all over the world. So you're going to make a lot of money. And because of how he beat Conor McGregor in the first fight, UFC 257 back in January, it's people are going to be paying a lot of attention to the next fight that happens between these two guys to see who actually win. Many people are saying after that fight back at UFC 257 that maybe it's time for Conor McGregor to retire. Maybe it's time for him to retire. He shouldn't have been focusing on trying to just portray his boxing skills inside the octagon. There, he should have just stuck to the method that he's always been using to win before in the past. It's always worked for him. He shouldn't have changed anything this time around, and unfortunately, look what happened. He lost. But I can understand the reason why Dustin Poirier did what he did. But going back to my initial point, what I'm saying is that the irony of what's happened, Charles Oliveira wants to fight Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier said no. So now Charles Oliveira is now the lightweight champion of the in the UFC and of the world. It's the UFC. So in terms of mixed martial arts, the UFC is up there at the at the top of the food chain of the best fighting organization throughout the whole world. Excuse me. So before, Dustin Poirier said no and refused to fight him, favoured a fight with Conor McGregor over a fight with Charles Oliveira, and lo and behold, now Charles Oliveira, can I say, is kind of now calling the shots. And I've seen some things like this happen before. You want someone to give you something, and let me say, you want someone to give you, you ask them for something, and they say, no, I'm not going to give it to you. They give it to somebody else instead. And okay, time goes on, you do your thing, they're doing their thing, and then suddenly again you cross paths again. And in this, so what I'm saying is that it's strange how the tables have turned. Now Charles Oliveira is calling the shots, and kind of calling the shots, let me put it that way, because whoever wins this fight will fight Charles Oliveira for the lightweight division title. So yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'd like, out of the three of those guys, I'm personally hoping that Conor McGregor wins against Dustin Poirier. Nothing personal, but I think a fight between McGregor and Charles Oliveira will be crazy. Of course, the pay-per-view bars will be through the roof because it's Conor McGregor, and he's competing with he's competing with the champion of the lightweight division of the UFC. So a lot of pay-per-views are going to be rolling in. You know, a lot of money is going to be made that day. Even if Charles Oliveira loses the fight, I think I can safely say, because I'm very careful what I say when I'm making this podcast on this sport. I think I can safely say that even if Charles Oliveira loses to Conor McGregor because of the pay-per-views, because it's Conor McGregor who's involved in this fight, it's going to generate so much money, and even if he loses, he's going to still take home a really big payout. So yeah, out of those three people, I'm hoping that Conor McGregor wins. So it'll be an interesting matchup. If not Conor McGregor, then Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje is also a very entertaining fighter to watch when he's in the octagon. So the next point I'm going to make, and it's something that I'm going to be very careful how I word my opinions about the whole matter. The Joshua Fabia and Diego Sanchez situation, and I'm still trying to invite Joshua Fabia onto the podcast to actually have a conversation with him about the whole matter. But what's happened recently is that Diego Sanchez has actually cut ties. This is reportedly what's being said on the internet, on the social media, on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and all the major social media platforms. So what's happened, many people are saying that perhaps Diego Sanchez has actually woken up and seen that maybe Joshua Fabia isn't the right person having his life at this point in time. Maybe Joshua Fabia has cut ties with him. You know, one thing I do know is that when it comes to things like this, there's always two sides of the story, and a lot of the stuff that's been reported on YouTube, on virtually even on the mainstream media as well as social media, is always done by a human being, and a human being, that particular person has their own opinion. So they're going to report the news, they're going to report the story in a way that suits them or suits their own agenda, that actually agrees and portrays their opinion in a certain way that they want people to perceive it in that manner. So again, there's all sorts of things that I picked up from different videos I saw on YouTube and different sources I saw on Instagram and on Twitter and other media platforms as well. But again, personally, I would like to hear Joshua Fabia's side of the story, because people know who Diego Sanchez is and they respect him for what he's achieved in the sport of mixed martial arts, particularly in the UFC. they're probably much more inclined, all the YouTubers, all the mixed martial arts and combat sports and sporting podcasters and YouTubers and whoever they are that make media content related to the sport, they're probably going to side with Diego Sanchez because of his name and because they know who he is. But Joshua Fabia, still, overall, many people don't know too much about him. They only know about himself, his school of self-awareness that he has in the Albuquerque area of New Mexico in the US. And, you know, I'll say it like it is. Many do blame him for Diego Sanchez's cutting ties with the UFC, or Diego Sanchez being released from the UFC. I know many people do blame him for that. But again, me personally, I like to hear both sides of the story, and I haven't seen any other YouTube channel or podcaster, combat sports podcaster, or any other media platform, social or mainstream, actually speaking to Joshua Fabia at least one-to-one, when it's just him as the guest and them as the host. I've never seen that anywhere, so I would like to get him on the podcast to speak with him and to get his side of the story and to get his version of events. I can appreciate that even as a small YouTube channel, as a really tiny podcast, a really tiny mixed martial arts podcast, that anybody watching this or anybody even looking at my Instagram content probably will dislike me for having that opinion, for trying to get that to happen. But that's just who I am. When I see something happening, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I've been in that situation on the receiving end whereby people haven't seen the whole picture or heard the whole story, but they just see things black and white. They don't like to get both sides of the story before they can actually come to a conclusion as to what's actually happened, and to come to a conclusion as to what sort of person somebody is. And that's what I want. So getting him on my show, I think, will be refreshing for me, and would also be an eye opener as well to the whole situation. So guys, I just want to put that out there. Excuse me. What else was I going to say? No, I think I've covered everything I need to cover in this podcast. In fact, it's a bit of a late podcast because the event that I've just covered, UFC VEGAS 29, is going to be happening in the next few hours. It's about 7:20 here in the UK GMT time. So I'm going to try and get this uploaded later on this evening, latest by the end of today, being Friday. So yeah, and just put it out there. So I'm going to wrap that up. Guys, you can listen to my podcast on Spotify, on Apple, on Google Podcasts, and also certain other minor minor audio platforms, audio streaming platforms. You can also see my podcast there also. I think on Apple, the icon, the logo for my podcast doesn't change from the old logo to the new logo, so I'm going to look into that. You can catch me on Instagram. My name's Ike Jarko1. On Twitter and Facebook, my name's Ike Jarko. And yes, I think I've covered everything. Guys, if you did enjoy this podcast, this video, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to please leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It really helps my channel when you do that. Thanks again.